In 1974, Norio Suzuki, a Japanese college dropout, embarked on a daring journey to find Hiroo Onoda, a Japanese soldier believed to have died after World War II. In reality, Onoda was still alive, hiding in the jungles of Lubang Island, Philippines, for nearly 29 years. As an intelligence officer, Onoda was ordered to conduct guerrilla warfare against U.S. forces but lost communication with his command. Unaware that the war had ended, he and his comrades continued their mission under harsh conditions, oblivious to the immense global changes, including the atomic bombings. Hiroo Onoda was a Japanese intelligence officer in World War II, tasked with leading a guerrilla force on Lubang Island, Philippines, to resist American troops. However, after Japan surrendered in 1945, he and a group of soldiers lost contact with the military and remained unaware that the war had ended. Due to a lack of information, they continued fighting, dismissing surrender leaflets as enemy propaganda. The absence of modern communication technology like telephones or the internet left them completely isolated. They survived on limited food supplies, resorting to hunting and foraging while the fear of being discovered and attacked heightened their psychological stress. Despite exhaustion and mounting hardships, Onoda and his comrades remained steadfast in their belief that they were fulfilling their duty, continuing guerrilla operations for years after the war had officially ended. After the war ended, Hiroo Onoda and his comrades remained hidden in the jungles of Lubang Island, Philippines, refusing to believe that Japan had surrendered. To survive, they hunted, foraged, and stole food from villagers, but their deep suspicion and fear of deception led them to reject all evidence of peace. Food shortages, harsh living conditions, and prolonged isolation took a toll on their mental state. When Soldier Akatsu surrendered to the Philippine authorities, their confusion deepened, yet Onoda and the remaining soldiers remained determined to fight. Villagers referred to them as mountain demons and sought to capture them, while local authorities persistently tried to persuade them to surrender. Despite calls for peace and the changing times, the group clung to their belief that the war was ongoing, continuing to fight in the shadows of the past. Hiroo Onoda and Private Kozuka continued hiding in the jungles of Lubang Island for years after World War II, fully convinced that Japan was still winning. Deeply influenced by wartime propaganda, they rejected all evidence of Japan's surrender and viewed peace messages as enemy trickery. Their extreme skepticism led them to maintain guerrilla tactics, even setting fires as signals for imaginary comrades while villagers attempted to capture them, calling them mountain demons. By 1965, they stole a radio and heard global news but still refused to believe Japan had surrendered. Although the island's living conditions had improved after the war, they continued to hide and fight, clinging to the past and refusing to accept that the world had changed. For nearly 30 years after World War II, Hiroo Onoda stubbornly hid in the jungles of Lubang Island, Philippines, convinced that the war was not over. With unwavering loyalty to Japan, he carried out his mission, fighting an imaginary war against the Philippine Army in local villagers. Despite overwhelming evidence proving the war had ended, Onoda remained skeptical, believing it was enemy deception. Every attempt to locate and persuade him to surrender failed until 1974 when Norio Suzuki, a Japanese college dropout, set out to find Onoda. With sincerity and patience, Suzuki approached Onoda, spoke with him, and gradually convinced him that Japan had been at peace for years. However, Onoda insisted he could only surrender upon receiving direct orders from his superior. Eventually, the Japanese government located Onoda's former commander, who officially ordered him to lay down his arms. In March 1974, Hiroo Onoda finally surrendered, ending nearly 3 decades of living in the past, becoming one of the last World War II soldiers to accept peace. After nearly 30 years in hiding in the jungles of Lubang Island, Hiroo Onoda steadfastly refused to surrender, believing the war was still ongoing. He continued his mission, ignoring all attempts by the Philippine and Japanese governments to convince him otherwise. This extreme conviction stemmed from absolute loyalty to Japan and the deep influence of wartime propaganda. Every peace message, leaflets, radio broadcasts, and search parties, was dismissed as an enemy ploy. By 1974, Norio Suzuki, a Japanese college dropout, sought out Onoda with the goal of proving that the war had long ended. Through patience and sincerity, Suzuki earned Onoda's trust, but Onoda insisted he would only surrender if ordered directly by his commanding officer. Faced with this, the Japanese government tracked down Onoda's former commander, who personally traveled to the Philippines to give the order. In March 1974, Onoda finally surrendered, ending nearly 3 decades of feudal warfare and becoming one of the last World War II soldiers to lay down arms.